Howdy champs, my name is Mohit and people, today in this tutorial we'll talk about radial gradients in CSS3. We'll be using or creating radial gradients using CSS3. So let's start. I'm going to say a file and a new, and I'm going to choose the doc type to be HTML5. People also notice that I've chosen the layout to be none, and let me hit the create button. Alright, I'm deliberately going to wipe off all the code that has been inserted because I would be using Zen coding to code out real quick. And people, it's a code assist plugin that even you can download absolutely free off the internet. Zen coding, and it allows you to type at an amazing speed that you're gonna see right now. Since I'll be working with HTML :5, basically HTML5, this is the way to write it with Zen code. Don't get confused, people. I think everything will become very clear very soon. And inside my HTML5 document, I'll be inserting a div with an ID of radial gradient RG. Alright, and that div radial gradient will have an attribute, select an attribute, the style attribute. Basically I would want to insert inline styles, and inside the inline styles the first thing I would want to do is have the width as 600 px, the height at 400 px, alright, the border radius set at 100%. Now that's going to round off the division, but since the division is 600, 400 and not 400 each or 600 each, it will not be a perfect circle. It will come out as an ellipse, as we'll soon see. People, I know you're kind of confused, what kind of a code am I writing out here, but don't be. In a minute everything will be just clear, very clear, absolutely clear. Alright, so border radius property for the rounding, set it at 100%, people, and in the end border 1 px solid, let's say white, right? So basically I would want to see an HTML5 document inside which I would want to see a div with an ID of RG, and that div should have inline style of width 600, height 400, border radius 100%, and a border of 1 px solid white. Make sure that the cursor is blinking at the extreme right. People, I'm in the code view, by the way, and hit Control plus comma, and now I think you understand what I was trying to do. Basically using the code assist plugin Zen coding to code out real quick, right? I should be filling in the title tag, but I'm skipping it for now. Let's save the document up. Let's call it radial check. Let's override the earlier file that I'd made while I was testing for this tutorial. Alright, so basically inside the body of the document we have a div with an ID RG, which has an inline style of width 600, height 400, border radius 100%, border 1 px solid white. Alright, let's see how things look like in the browser. Let's bring up the browser. Google Chrome. Alright, I can't see anything simply because my border is actually white, but I'll be able to do so once I turn the page through the background color into a different color. Okay, notice that the opening and the closing style tags have been inserted out here with the body having a background color of #333. Now you'll be able to see everything clearly. Alright, so inside the opening and the closing body tags, people, we had the division, and this is the division. Why is it actually elliptical? Is because the border radius set at 100%. Alright, and I'll be dropping in my radial gradient inside this division, this egg-like elliptical like shape. This is where I'll be dropping my radial gradient. Okay, make sure that you are in clicking anywhere in line number 13, people, where you have the opening closing div tags with the ID RG. Make sure that you click on this plus button down here at the bottom. to create a new CSS rule. The ID will be automatically set, the contextual selector will be automatically set at ID, and the name will auto populate. If that doesn't happen, just do some manually. We'll be creating the rule inside this document only, basically creating an internal or an embedded style. People, I'm going to say OK, and I'm not going to make any changes. Straight away say OK. Don't make any edits or addition out here. We'll be doing so manually. Use the background shorten property, people, just the way I've actually done, and then write dash WebKit. Now why WebKit? Simply because I'm using the WebKit browser, Chrome, to check my code. Okay. Now how should I make it compatible with Mozilla, Opera, Safari? We'll look at that later. Basically, when you use the WebKit vendor prefix, you're making it compatible with Chrome and Safari. Now some of the browsers may not actually need the prefix, in which case we'll be doing the plain vanilla coding too. But still, you know, as of today, we still need to add the vendor prefixes. They might come a time later in the future when we might not be doing so. We will not be required to do so. That will not be a mandatory step, but as of now we need to do that. Okay, so dash WebKit dash vendor prefix is to make the code or the markup compatible with Chrome and Safari. I'll be testing all my code in Chrome, people, and then I need to say radial dash gradient. Alrighty, and then use the colors inside. Alright, this is the syntax. The colors go out here. By default, all radial gradients are elliptical. That's the default shape, and always start off from the center of the object. Now again, that's the default. So if I just mention the colors out here, I'm going to use fruity names like lime, orange, or rather lime, plum, and orange in the ascending order of their size. Alright, so it will always, the radial gradient will always start from the center of the object unless otherwise specified, and will always be an ellipse if the shape allows it to do so, unless otherwise called a circle. Or there are other ways to manipulate the shape, as we'll look at in a while. Let's save the document up, people. Let's bring up the browser Chrome. Let's refresh to see what has actually happened. You see all the three colors or shades have been spread evenly, starting from the very center of the division. It's a division. Why it looks elliptical is basically of uneven width and height, and the border radius has been used out here and set at 100%. Alright, if the width and the height were equal, people, it would be a perfect circle. Now, as I said, we can actually change the elliptical shape or the ellipse, which is the default, to the circle. All you need to do is just come in front of the first color name and add the word circle. C-I-R-C-L-E. Alright, save the document up, people. Bring up the browser. Let's refresh, and there was a subtle change. I don't know how many of you actually could notice it. There was a subtle change, and the elliptical radial gradient changed its shape to a circle. Cool. Now, as I said, by default, all your radial gradients start from the center of the object. So basically 50% x-axis, 50% y-axis, and that wouldn't gonna make a change if I refresh now. After, there's no change, simply because it was starting in the very center. But you can have it start from a different point. Now this, the first argument is the position, the second is the shape, then we have the colors, and the colors may or may not include the color stops, right? So if I say something like top left, you see top left, Control S to save the document up, bring up the browser, and let's refresh. You see the radial gradient actually starting the lime, then we have the plum and the orange. You see it's actually changed its origin. It's no more at the center. Alright, or I could probably say center. Again, that's 50%, 50%. Or I can specify the position in terms of pixels. let's go with 100 px x-axis, 100 px offset on the y-axis. Control S, bring the browser up. Let's refresh, see the change. You know, the gradient actually shifted. Let's make it 250 this time, or 200 this time, right? Let's save the changes, bring up the browser. Let's refresh. You see it actually shifted its position. All right, so I'm sure you understand how things are controlled here, the position that is. Now as far as the circle is concerned, if I can, the default option is ellipse, E-L-L-I-P-S-E, basically gives you an elliptical shape, but you can actually manipulate the shape yourself. Let's say I would want to see, first of all, let me just get rid of, no, let's keep this. Let's keep it center, and let's keep the center out here. All right, this is the position. As far as the shape is concerned, let's say I would want to see 100 px by 100 px circular shape in width and height instead of the normal circle that we were looking at. So basically I would want my circle to be spread only this much, right? Just to occupy this much area, 100 px each in width and height. Bring up the browser. Let's refresh. This issue, let me just check why. Let me pause the video and check. Alright people, I've actually fixed the small typo. Center is spelled C-E-N-T-E-R and I actually spelled it C-E-N-T-R-E. Alright, I've made the correction, and now this time if I actually check, you can see that we have the radial gradient spread over 100 px each only. But if I were to, let's say, increase the size to 200 but 400 here, so I'm going to see an ellipse this time. Obviously this is the shape that's gonna be the outcome on the x and the y axis, occupying these many pixels. So if I say file and save, bring the browser up, and if I refresh, people just see width and height, how the shape has actually changed. Let's interchange 400 by 200. This becomes 4, this becomes 2, right? The gradient will rotate itself 90 degrees. Let's bring the browser up, let's refresh. That's exactly what has happened, people. So you see how easy it is to manipulate the shape and the position, the originating position from where the gradient actually emerges. How easy it is. So the first argument is the position, then we go to the shape, and then we go to the colors, and then obviously, as I said, you can include color stops in terms of percentage or pixels, right? Let's say if let's remove all these arguments and let's just focus on the color stops. So if I say my first color stop to be at 10%, the second one to be at 20%, right, and the third one to be at 30%. Let's see what happens. Orange will dominate the area, people. Let's save it up, bring up the browser, let's refresh, and that's exactly what has happened. You see at 10% lime finishes, another 10% plum finishes, but rest is left for the orange to rule like a master, right? So basically you see how easy it is to manipulate the radial gradient. I'm using vendor prefix WebKit, people. For Mozilla it will be Moz, for Microsoft Internet Explorer it will be MS instead of WebKit. Opera will have the vendor prefix O. Rest everything remains just the same, people. So it will be dash radial gradient, right? This is the way we'll be making them compatible with the other browsers too, and that is something we'll be covering in the next part of the tutorial. We'll also be covering repeating patterns in the next part, people. So please join me in the next part. You have a good day. Bye bye. Peace.